It's Sunday. I have my whip. This is Feeling Foxy by Nazgul. It is a 40 by 50 in square. My choice of canvas for today. Welcome and thank you for joining me. My name is Cindy and welcome to today's true crime story time. If you like true crime and you enjoy diamond painting, please feel free to hit that subscribe button on my channel not to miss out on future episodes. So along with true crime, I release these on Sundays as and when time allows. I also go live on Mondays where you get to hang out, work on our diamond paintings, I do my giveaways and see upcoming releases for the week and so much more in between. I love my Mondays because I get to hang out with you guys and I love my Monday evenings. It's my downtime, kinda. So yes, I do own a diamond painting company, and you may or may not have heard, I have indeed bought out DIY Moonshop, and I'm currently working very hard to resolve the issues left behind by them and planning for everything else to continue as usual. It's just taken up a lot of my time right now. But yeah, you're welcome to go take a look on the website, see if anything jumps out at you. I do ship worldwide at no extra cost. But there you go, that is me. Obviously I'm here today to talk about true crime. And this case kind of, it's all true crime is sad, but some really hit harder than others. And I think when you do true crime or you're into true crime, you kind of become a little bit desanitized to just how brutal people are, how cruel people are. But yeah, today I want to talk about Candace Hiltz, and this is known as the Gulch killer. So grab whatever you are working on, grab a drink, come join me, and we will talk about Candace Hiltz. Candace Hiltz was raised in the remote area of Gulch in Colorado. I'm assuming I'm saying that right, but please bear with me, I am English. An extremely rural area, a few hours south of Denver. Though she was a small town girl in every sense, she was exceedingly intelligent. By the age of 11, she was performing calculus, and by 17, when most of her friends were in high school, Candace was already in her third year of an online degree at Brigham Young University. Candace dreamed of being a lawyer and was awarded a scholarship to Stanford Law School. But when she found herself pregnant at 16, she began to rethink the idea of going away to school. To make matters worse, her baby, Paige, was born with a disorder that causes an abnormal build-up of fluid in the brain. Because of Paige's life expectancy, it wasn't long, Candace knew her time with her daughter would be limited and Stanford would have to wait. Candace was an outspoken young girl with a firm sense of what was right and wrong, which is probably why she wanted to be a lawyer. She could be very confrontational, and if she witnessed bullies or someone breaking the law, she had no problem speaking her mind. Sorry, side note here. I don't know if my mic is picking it up, but the neighbours somewhere are working on something and it's very annoying me. I don't know if you can hear it, as well as the traffic. But yeah, I apologise if that's irritating. It's irritating me. Candace's brother Jimmy was nothing like her. He was a sombre and quiet young man. When their father died, he struggled to cope with the loss. Jimmy fell into a world of drugs, alcohol, and suffered with very deep depression. He sank so low that he couldn't hold a conversation of more than a few sentences. Over time, Jimmy withdrew from the family, unable to communicate with anyone at all. He packed a backpack and a tent and lived in the enormous wooded area of Colorado on his own. In the summer of 2006, Candace and her mother Dolores were driving towards their home on Copper Gulch Road when they passed two vehicles parked on the side of the rural road. Candace recognised both vehicles. One was a local sheriff vehicle of an officer who was rumoured to be corrupt. The other was a well-known meth cook in the area. As they passed the vehicles, Candace and her mother both witnessed the drug cook handing the sheriff's deputy a thick envelope. In Candace's opinion, it was clear that a payoff or some sort of bribe was taking place. Candace was livid when she saw this, but with no proof, there was nothing she could do. A few days later, in early August, there was a knock at the door of the Hiltz home. Dolores answered the door. It was the same sheriff's deputy, and he was looking for Jimmy. The deputy told her that they believed Jimmy had been breaking in and burglarizing homes in the area. The accusation upset Dolores. She explained that Jimmy lived in the hills behind their home. He had severe mental problems and could never break into other people's homes because of his condition. Jimmy had been in and out of Colorado's Mental Health Institute for severe social phobia and anxiety. She told the officer that Jimmy could barely speak to people and could never deal with that kind of confrontation. It was impossible that he could have been breaking into homes. When the deputy called Dolores a, quote, damned liar, Candace overheard and ran to the door in a rage. She screamed at the deputy, who told her that if she didn't calm down, he would arrest her. Candace reacted by holding out her wrists in front of her and yelled, quote, go ahead, I will scream at the top of my lungs. What the hell are you doing taking envelopes from the drug cooks up here? End quote. The deputy was furious, but speechless. He angrily turned and stormed back to his vehicle and drove away. Later that week, the family dog, Jackson, went missing. Jackson was a house dog, and it was rare that he got outside unattended. On the occasions that he did get out, he wouldn't venture far from the house. Candace and her mother called and searched for the dog all day, but Jackson was nowhere to be found. When several days had passed and Jackson hadn't returned, they assumed that a mountain lion, which were common in the area, had possibly attacked him. 5 days after Jackson had gone missing, Dolores drove into town to run some errands and left Candace alone in the house to look after Paige. That afternoon, around 3:20 p.m, Dolores arrived home to find that someone had broken the back door open, and she could hear Paige crying in one of the bedrooms. As she walked into the hallway, she knew something was dreadfully wrong. There was blood all over the hallway. As she entered the first bedroom, she saw that Paige was in her crib, crying, but at least safe. Dolores then ran further down the hallway into Candace's room. There was blood pooling on the floor, but initially she didn't see any sign of Candace. It was then that she noticed that the bed was slightly angled and raised at one end. Underneath the bed, it looked as if someone had shoved a large green quilt under the bed, causing the tilt of the bed. But when she tugged at the quilt, she soon realised the disturbing truth. Candace had been shot point blank in the face, head and chest, rolled into the quilt and callously stuffed beneath the bed. A shotgun shell was found in front of the fireplace in the living room. Just days after accusing a Fremont County Sheriff's deputy of taking bribes, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office was now in charge of investigating Candace's murder. 2 detectives were assigned to the case, Detective Harry Sharp and lead detective Robert Dodd. Dolores was questioned only briefly, and it seemed to her that Dodd really didn't have an interest in what she had to say. It was evident that he already had a suspect for the murder: her son, Jimmy. Police quickly developed their theory. They believed that Jimmy had broken down the back door of the house, intending to kill his sister. One of the houses that they suspected Jimmy of breaking into previously was missing a shotgun. They believed he had shot Candace with that gun and then stuffed her beneath the bed and fled. Dolores knew their assumptions were absurd. Jimmy was just not the type to go on a rampage. He loved his sister and had no reason to kill her. In any case, Jimmy wouldn't have needed to break down the door. He had his own key and could come and go anytime he liked. Despite her contention, police started a multi-agency search for Jimmy. for the murder of his sister Candace. Search teams canvassed the endless acres around the home. After 5 days of searching, police found the family dog Jackson, dead, with the leash still attached to his collar. He had been missing for over a week. From the amount of decomposition, it was clear someone had killed Jackson not long after he had gone missing. Detectives assumed that someone had removed the dog from the house so that the killer could more easily get into the house to kill Candace. This made the murder premeditated. To Dolores, it assured her even further that this was not the work of Jimmy. Jimmy loved the dog and would have no reason to have killed him. 3 days after they found the dog, police found Jimmy camping in the woods. He was unarmed and had no idea the police had been looking for him. Detectives spent days interrogating Jimmy, but he refused to confess to the murder or the string of burglaries they had accused him of. Detectives Dodd and Sharp had no physical evidence against Jimmy. Without DNA, ballistics, or blood evidence, they had no reason other than their own hunch to charge him. Jimmy was charged with burglary, but was eventually deemed insane and unable to defend himself. He was admitted back to the Colorado Mental Health Institute for an indeterminate amount of time until he was mentally stable enough to stand trial. The fact that he was mentally ill only furthered the detective's belief that he was the killer. Dolores, however, knew that that was not true and was worried that his mental illness and the pressure of the accusations would drive him to consider suicide. Years passed by and no other suspects emerged. The case remained open, but no additional investigation was ever done on the case. 7 years after Candace's murder, Paige died from complications of her disease. When a person rents a storage unit and fails to pay the rent, the contents of the unit go up for auction. Without knowing what's inside, anyone who's interested can bid on the contents, hoping that whatever is inside is worth more than they paid for it. 10 years after Candace's murder, Rick Ratzliff attended an auction for an abandoned storage unit in Cannon City, Colorado. With a bid of only $80, Rick won the auction and clipped the lock off the unit. As Rick rummaged through the contents of the storage unit, he was puzzled to find an envelope marked evidence. When he picked up the paper envelope, a small axe dropped through the bottom of the deteriorating bag. Another bag marked evidence contained a rope. Both the rope and axe were still covered in blood. Inside the storage unit, Rick also found a box full of old police uniforms. When he held up one of the uniforms, he noticed the name sewn into it read Dodd. Rick knew the name and realised he had purchased Detective Robert Dodd's abandoned unit. He had remembered his name from hearing the news reports of Candace's murder 10 years prior. Astonished as to why the highest-ranking detective in the Fremont County Sheriff's Office would have crime scene evidence in a personal storage locker, Rick handed the evidence over to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation verified that the items were indeed evidence from the Candace Hiltz murder investigation. Detective Dodd claimed that he stored the items intending to take additional photos of them, but it slipped his mind. When the story of the recovered evidence hit the local news, public pressure on the sheriff's office mounted, and in January 2017, Robert Dodd was put on paid admin leave. The public also demanded more answers as to why there had never been charges brought against anyone for the murder. Because of the media pressure, police finally released the pathology report on Candace's murder. The general assumption of the media and public had been what the police had told them, that Jimmy Hiltz had murdered his sister but could not stand trial due to his mental illness. But when the autopsy findings were released, public opinion quickly turned away from that assumption. The autopsy showed that Candace had been killed with 3 separate weapons. She had been shot point blank in the face with a shotgun. Then she was shot 5 times in the back of the head with a .22 caliber rifle. Lastly, she was shot in the chest directly through the heart with a medium caliber handgun. Astonishingly, the Fremont County Sheriff's Office stuck by their theory that the murder was pulled off by Jimmy alone, despite any physical evidence pointing towards him. Robert Dodd succumbed to the pressure of the media and the public accusations and decided to move to Texas. When he was packing to move, he had asked for a small dumpster to be parked in the driveway in front of his home so he could throw away the things he didn't want to move. After he filled the dumpster, he called the Penrose landfill to come pick it up and take it away. Rob Orton was an employee for Penrose landfill and was charged with picking up the dumpster from Todd's property. Knowing Dodd's notoriety, Rob was curious of the contents in the dumpster. When he got it to the landfill and dumped it, he noticed some strange items amongst the garbage. Not only did Dodd not go through the proper chain of evidence when he put the items in his personal storage locker, he had also brought items home and later dumped them in his garbage. Rob called a local reporter who had been covering the story and invited her to the landfill to go through the evidence before they called in the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. Together, Rob and the reporter took photos of the items that Dodd had thrown away. They found a toolbox marked Forensic Light Kit, FSCO Crime Scene Unit, assorted evidence DVDs, an FSCO laptop, computer, and more than 20 VHS videotapes labelled, quote, sexual assault evidence. There were also envelopes full of sexual assault statements taken from victims. Many of the statements were from children who had drawn pictures of their attackers in crayon. Dodd had determined that this was evidence that could just be thrown in the trash. It surely seemed that Robert Dodd had something to hide. In May 2017, he was charged with official misconduct. At Robert Dodd's trial, it was revealed that just days after the Candace Hiltz murder evidence was found in the storage locker, Dodd had logged into the official computer archive report of the murder and edited it 6 times. He had deliberately altered the case file with false information. It was also revealed at trial that some evidence from the storage locker pointed to an additional person of interest in Candace's murder. The person of interest, however, was never revealed. Even if the person of interest had been revealed, the evidence had never been tested for DNA, and because it's now degraded, it's now useless. Dodd's defence claimed that the sheriff's office had no specific policies or procedures for handling of evidence. In July 2019, Robert Dodd was found guilty on 2 counts of official misconduct and abuse of a public record. He was sentenced to $1,000 and 15 days of incarceration, but never spent a day in jail. Because of this case and several others, 11 additional officers within the Fremont County Sheriff's Office were placed on leave. 12 years after her death, no one has ever been charged with Candace's murder, and Jimmy is still a patient at Colorado Mental Health Institute. He also works there as a counsellor for other patients. This case is just so very, very tragic. Candace was 17 years old when she died, and her mum found her body, not only had she been murdered, she had been murdered in the most horrific way. And it has been said that it was like she was unrecognisable. It was that brutal. Now, I had to go and look up some things because I don't understand where the axe came from in the evidence bag along with the rope. And I thought, oh, maybe they were just missing details out of the crime scene, but it's actually linked to the dog, Jackson. He was found tied to a tree and murdered with an axe. So a very deliberate act. To me, I think it's safe to kind of say that law enforcement were behind it. I do think the three officers, the one that Candace was like holding her wrists up to and saying, well, hey, I'll just tell everyone that you're taking bribes from drug dealers. I think he was the main guy. It seems to have fallen on Dodd a lot more because he's the one hiding the evidence and covering up the scene. But I think with the 3 different guns, it implicates 3 different people. We discovered the sheriff, Dodd, and the other one that was investigating the murder. Now, if you're a police officer, especially the sheriff, deputy sheriff, you are going to botch up the crime scene. You're not going to document evidence properly. You're not going to seal off the crime scene. Sorry, it's my dog. You're not going to seal off the crime scene. You're going to contaminate evidence and conceal evidence, plant evidence. It's screaming to me that these officers were involved, and it's a very, very... She was 17. And that's the bit I can't get over. She was a 17-year-old who had dreams of becoming... working in the field of law. And it was law officers, in my opinion, that took her life. Very, very tragic case that I've covered today, and my heart goes out to Dolores, because not only did she lose her daughter in the most horrific, brutal way, to law enforcement, in my opinion, she also lost Jimmy. I know Jimmy was lost in his own way, but then he ended up at Colorado Mental Health. I do believe he was charged with murder at one point, but the case didn't proceed. And with all of his mental health and his anxiety, would it be possible? Probably. It's just seems unlikely from the research that I did into Jimmy. He just took himself off and was looking for inner peace himself. And he didn't need to break in. He had a key. He knew where his mum and sister lived, and it's just a heartbreaking case. And my heart really does go out to Dolores, and I'm sad to say that justice has never been given to Dolores. And then obviously Paige passed away due to complications to her disorder, and Dolores is left to cope with that all on her own. It's very, very tragic. I wish I had an update for you where there had been arrests or justice had been served, but sadly the case remains open, and no answers are forthcoming. And because of the evidence found in the locker, it was all degraded and contaminated. Yeah, they got away with it, and I have no words. I'm just very, very saddened, and what a tragic case. My heart goes out to Candace's family, and yeah. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode and keeping me company. I hope you got some of your project done, and I will be back next week with a true crime story time. Have a great rest of your week. Fanatics, I will see you tomorrow, 8 p.m. UK time on my Monday Night Live. And yeah, stay safe out there, guys. Bye.